On April 10th, leading government officials are set to make an explosive announcement, a legal move that will single-handedly unleash a $150 billion untapped market and send three tiny pot stocks surging for historic 1,000% gains or higher, virtually overnight. Forbes writes that this one event will make investors extremely wealthy. Troy Dayton, CEO of the hedge fund ArcView Group, says new millionaires and potential billionaires are about to be made. And in anticipation of this fast-approaching event, government insiders are moving their money into cannabis and seeing bigger profits than their salaries. Like a 2016 presidential candidate who also happens to be president of a $67 million Nevada pot firm. Although he didn't win, election year proved absolutely gangbusters for his portfolio. In fact, the share price of his tiny marijuana stock surged from 33 cents in February to $8.25 in November. That's a whopping 2,500% gain in just 9 months. These sorts of returns could make a president's salary look like peanuts, and it's all 100% legal. Let me ask you, did you see 25 times your money in 2016? I doubt 99.99% of investors did. Yet these are the millionaire-making returns that pot stocks are famous for. Here's just a snapshot of gains from marijuana stocks in 2016. 4,500% on Cannabix Pharmaceuticals, 2,100% on United Cannabis Corp., 1,969% on Weed Inc., 820% on Abatis Bioceuticals, 2,066% on American Cannabis Company, 5,800% on Agritech Holdings, and even 50,200% on The name is blacked out because the company is in my open portfolio. The examples go on and on. These are the kind of 10 and 100 bagger gains seen from cannabis stocks, all in just the last 12 months. The kind of returns I once again expect from this April 10th announcement. So it should come as no surprise that after years of spending taxpayer dollars waging war against marijuana, lawmakers are giving up the losing battle and going all in on the green rush. The Washington Post reports the people lining up to profit include former sheriffs and state lawmakers, wealthy business executives, and well-connected political donors. The Boston Globe adds that former elected officials and politically connected figures have joined the marijuana sweepstakes. It's an absolute gold rush, says Massachusetts attorney John Sheft. You are an idiot if you are running a dispensary and you can't make a couple of $1 million in profit. And they're not alone. Billionaire political donors are joining the frenzy too, including Trump confidant Peter Thiel, who just staked $75 million on a marijuana venture firm. Tesla's Elon Musk, a Hillary donor, is developing batteries that could power indoor marijuana growers. George Soros, a big-time Democratic donor, is buying into mass marijuana cultivation farms. Even Warren Buffett is joining the frenzy. Bloomberg reports that the Oracle from Omaha is now putting money in marijuana storage facilities. Bill Gates' Microsoft, which spends $10 million per year on lobbying, just got into the pot industry. The mega conglomerate is now offering software that tracks pot growth from seed to sale. And with the legalization unfolding rapidly, the New York Times says, Microsoft is well placed for the action. In fact, the cannabis boom is so lucrative that former Microsoft executive Jamin Shively, who worked directly with Bill Gates, left the software giant to begin a marijuana startup. According to Shively, aka the Bill Gates of cannabis, the industry is on track to create more millionaires than Microsoft. Politicians, government insiders, and their billionaire donors, they're all piling into marijuana ventures in anticipation of this government announcement. But the opportunity to become millionaires is not just for these powerful players. In fact, everyday Americans are now getting rich on the end of pot prohibition, 100% legally. Take Jeffrey Moss, a 40-year-old North Washington farmer. Last year, he couldn't afford a car and had to rely on his parents for money and his friends for meals. Now legalization has made him a millionaire on his marijuana holdings, virtually overnight. In fact, since the state law passed last year, he's grossed $5 million. Then there's Carrie Vincetti, 33, who left her job as a paralegal to join the Green Rush, not to sell marijuana, but as a consultant to startup cannabis entrepreneurs. With so many people looking to make a killing on the Green Rush, her own business is booming. So far, she's raked in a $2 million fortune. And there's Alan Gostov, who lost all of his savings investing in a music venture. He and his wife were sleeping on cardboard furniture and had a baby on the way when they moved out to Anaheim, California, and opened a marijuana business. They went from being almost homeless to raking in over $1 million last year. The examples go on and on. People everywhere are waking up overnight to find themselves sitting on a mountain of riches. CNN calls them the new marijuana millionaires. Now you can join these brand new millionaires without starting a business, owning a farm, or ever touching an ounce of marijuana. In fact, in order to make a fortune from the cannabis boom, you don't have to live in a state where marijuana is legal, you don't have to sign any petitions or do any political advocacy, and you don't need to have anything more than $25 to invest. You just need to buy in now, before the April 10th announcement legalizes pot once and for all. Look, marijuana legalization is inevitable. It's happening. A $150 billion tidal wave of wealth is about to be unleashed. There's no question that pot is poised to create a whole new class of green rush millionaires. There's only one question left: how to buy in. That's the scoop I've got for you. For the last decade, I've had my feet wet in the marijuana market. I've gone out to dozens of companies' operations, sites that are kept secret from the public. I've seen their grow farms, met their executives, and hobnobbed with their biochemists. I've pulled back the curtain on the quarterly earnings report and seen their real profit potential. In short, I've gotten the insider's view that you won't hear from analysts sitting behind a desk. And I've honed in on 3 specific plays that are set to surge on the government's April announcement. Using history as a guide, they could deliver nothing less than 1,000% profits moving forward. And that's just in the next few months. In just a moment, I'll share with you details on these red-hot pot stocks to make a small fortune for investors. All because I'm confident of one simple thing. Legal marijuana is the kind of once-in-a-lifetime megatrend that delivers big wins. The kind you can retire on, with more money than you know what to do with. You see, we hardly ever see the birth of a new billion-dollar industry, or the opportunity to get in before these profits are unlocked, much less one where money is already there under the surface. That's what makes the emergence of America's newest and most lucrative industry, legal marijuana, the most extraordinary profit opportunity I've ever seen. And even though the market is still only legal in some places, in the last 12 months, I've shown my readers multiple home run gains on some of the hottest emerging marijuana plays, like a whopping 830% gain on the Amazon of cannabis in 2016. In fact, I'm so confident this play could soar for 10-fold gains, or higher, that I'm letting it ride for the long haul. I've recommended a marijuana VC firm that we sold partially for 120% gains in just 2 weeks. We let the other half ride, and as of writing this message, my readers and I are sitting on a 215% gain and later booked a 380% profit in just 2 to 3 months. I recommended a biotech developing marijuana treatments that we sold for 93% gains in 7 months, and a Canadian marijuana delivery company that handed us 73% gains in 7 months. Just in the past 2 weeks, we've seen double-digit gains on a hemp food producer and a legal cannabis firm. The list goes on. And you don't have to take my word for it. Here's what some of my readers are saying.
Stocks, but you have showed me the way. Thank you, Captain.
I've never bought a Canadian stock before, but I'm so glad I did this time. 110% on in less than a month. You've proven that it's never too late to try something new.
But while I'm honored to help my readers see these kinds of quick, triple-digit returns, the gains we could see on April 10th will make everything I've just shown you look like crumbs. Which is why I'm shouting from the rooftop to back up the truck on marijuana before it's too late. In just a moment, I'll share with you details on this imminent marijuana catalyst and how to position yourself early. That includes the exact details on the 3 red-hot pot stocks I've identified next. But before I do, allow me to answer one important question. What sort of wealth is up for grabs? The good news is, we don't have to guess. In just 36 months, the legal market has surged from practically zero to a $4.4 billion industry. A newly released market report even calls legal marijuana America's fastest growing industry. Smartphones came in a distant second. Last year, sales surged 63%. The year before, they skyrocketed 74%. And the year before that, 64%. No market has taken off at this rate since the tech boom began in the early 90s. Now, remember, we've just seen the results of 4 states fully legalizing pot. 4 others just joined them in November. And as it spreads across the country, it's not hard to imagine this story will look a whole lot different. After all, we're looking at tens of millions of new and already existing customers. This is a giant mountain of money waiting to be unlocked. When all is said and done, hedge fund Acral Capital estimates the legal market at a whopping $100 billion. That's an incredible sales surge of 2,300%. And that's from a very conservative forecast. In fact, the Cohen Group, a New York market research firm, estimates California's legal market alone is a whopping $25 billion opportunity. One thing is clear. We're experiencing the kind of astronomical growth that turns everyday folks into millionaires. Which is why financial journalist Todd Harrison calls marijuana the best investment idea of the next decade. The Daily Bell takes it a bit further, claiming it's the profit opportunity of the 21st century. And one hedge fund owner told Wall Street investors, there is a massive potential. It is untapped, it is just sitting there below the surface, and is ready to come above ground. It's also why Silicon Valley is now scrambling to join the green rush. In fact, at my recent Money Show presentation, I spoke to early VC investors in companies like Uber, Reddit, and Tesla Motors. All are pouring capital into emerging marijuana startups, and see even bigger opportunity than anything Silicon Valley has delivered since the iPhone. The Financial Times now calls marijuana Silicon Valley's hot new sector. And as the LA Times puts it, they're leveraging the legalization of marijuana into a windfall. So are Fortune 500 corporations, including companies previously opposed to marijuana legalization, like Big Tobacco, Big Agriculture, Big Pharma. All are now getting a piece of the action. All are putting down millions in marijuana before it's legal nationwide. But here's the thing. The biggest pot profit opportunity moving forward is not in the United States, and the home run gains will not come from US-based pot firms. Instead, it'll happen north of the border, where the market is set to skyrocket 8 times faster, and where all the real future marijuana fortunes are going to be made. Let me repeat. Pot is set to explode for a 2,300% sales surge in America, and it's the nation's fastest growing industry, leapfrogging smartphones. And in Canada, it's poised to grow 8 times faster. It all begins with the urgent announcement set for April 10th, the day marijuana is 100% legalized in Canada for both medical and recreational use. On that day, the Canadian Parliament will convene for its first spring session. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will walk to the podium, calmly approach the mic, and in one fell swoop, he'll declare the end of marijuana prohibition throughout Canada, sparking a 17,400% sales surge that will mint all new millionaires. Within 24 hours, 200 marijuana stores will open, $2 million in taxes will be generated, and certain well-positioned pot stocks will explode for 1,000% gains or higher, companies like Budweiser or Anheuser-Busch, before the end of Prohibition. Imagine plunking down a tiny investment on just one stock and watching it mushroom into a legacy of wealth. That's the kind of potential we're now seeing before April 10th. In fact, some analysts see Canada as the world's pot capital. Alan Gertner, an industry insider, goes so far as to say, Canada could be to marijuana what France is to wine. Look, Canada is legalizing marijuana in April. It's happening. It's inevitable. And so are the profits up for grabs. There's no question we're about to see one of the most explosive profit runs in history. The only question is this: will you take action while there's still time? I certainly hope so, because the profits will come quick, they'll come fast, and they'll change lives, minting new millionaires. But they'll only come to investors who take action early and position themselves correctly. I'm talking about certain Canadian cannabis stocks that trade for as little as $1 or less. The ones who are positioned to rake in the lion's share of Canada's $22 billion pot market, and eventually become the Budweisers, Crown Spirits, and Anheuser-Busch's of marijuana. It doesn't matter how much you have either. In fact, just a $250 stake on these plays could mushroom into a retirement nest egg virtually overnight. How can I be so certain? Well, just look at what happened in the 2016 election. when an almost identical situation took place. Dozens and dozens of marijuana stocks simply exploded when several states passed similar legislation. In fact, over a year in advance, I predicted the November election would see many states legalize marijuana. And cannabis stocks would surge 1,000% across the board months before the election. Here's what I wrote to my readers back in October 2015. Investors will see the writing on the wall. They'll see a major election in 2016 that guarantees a shift in policy. They'll see dozens of states likely to pass legalization bills in November, and they'll snap up shares of marijuana companies in a frenzy, driving share prices up 1,000% or higher. You need to move right now because these stocks will start surging long before pot prohibition is officially over. But here's the thing. I was wrong. In fact, many of these penny stocks soared a whole lot higher and quicker than I ever imagined. Like United Cannabis Corp., which soared 1,676% in the 3 months leading up to Election Day. Or American Cannabis Company, which did a little better with 2,066% returns in that same time. And another, Agritech Holdings, skyrocketed for 5,800% gains in that same time. There are dozens of cannabis stocks like these that made investors rich in just 90 days or less. One of them, a play in my open portfolio, soared for unbelievable returns. In under 12 months, it shot up over 50,000%. Take a look. That's unbelievable. It's good enough to turn every $500 invested into $251,000. Every $1,000 invested into $502,000. And every $5,000 invested into $2,510,000. And in less than 1 year's time. If you had heeded my advice back then, saw how the November election would change everything, and took action early and decisively, then you too could have made a fortune, even with very little invested. But do not worry if you missed out on this round, because what I see coming is about to impact a very tiny number of specific pot stocks, a select group of marijuana companies that are still trading for pennies, and the gains are poised to come a whole lot higher and faster on April 10th. I've narrowed the selection down to the 3 pot plays with the biggest potential upside, the future Anheuser-Busch's, Bacardi's, and Miller Coors of marijuana. And I've laid the groundwork for you so you can get started immediately. You'll get all the details on how to profit from Canada's imminent end to marijuana prohibition, including these 3 red-hot plays. If there's one play I recommend you own for Canada's imminent legalization, this is it. It's the undisputed monopoly of their legal pot market. Yet I doubt most investors have ever heard of it. The Financial Post calls it Canada's first cannabis unicorn, and it has a $1 billion valuation, yet still trades for cheap. In fact, I consider it the single best marijuana opportunity in all of North America. Here's why. It's Canada's first licensed cannabis distributor and manufacturer. Its revenue surged 453% in just 12 months. Even with the Canada cannabis market still very limited. It's the first marijuana producer to be listed on a major stock exchange. And it controls 1/4 of the Canada cannabis market, with potential to only get bigger. Right now, the company's revenues are tiny, a mere $12 million. But it's not hard to see how this will look different moving forward. You see, it has dibs on 1 of every $4 in Canada's legal market, and its share is only getting bigger. Considering the experts' projection of Canada's pot market at $22 billion, we're looking at a potential $5.5 billion giant within just several years. That's a stunning 45,833% sales surge. Even if the projections are half right, or a fraction right, that's still unbelievable growth potential. This isn't some speculative situation either. The company is the only pot firm sitting on free cash and positive profits. In fact, right now, it is the only player in the Canadian market to generate free cash flow. This all means one thing. It can snap up its much weaker competitors, expanding the market share. In other words, we're early on the cusp of an explosive profit growth story. Since I recommended it last year, my readers and I have already seen massive 526% gains. That's good enough to turn a small investment of $10,000 into $62,600 in just a year. And it's just getting warmed up. With Canadian legalization imminent, It's poised to soar for tenfold gains starting April 10th. Over the next few years, we're looking at 45,833% total upside sales potential just in Canada alone. But it's not just North America. In fact, this company is now expanding into Germany, Australia, Brazil, and even Croatia. And it's already received export license for each of these potentially huge pot markets. So there's virtually no limits to how high the share price could soar. Bottom line, this is North America's #1 legacy pot stock, and now's the time to buy in while it's still ultra cheap. What would I recommend as your next most lucrative opportunity? A tiny Canada firm that's poised to lead the medical marijuana market. One started by none other than the ex-CEO of Purdue Pharma, the maker of OxyContin. If you're unfamiliar, Purdue Pharma is one of the largest privately held pharmaceutical companies in the world. Pain is a $635 billion industry, and firms like Purdue have raked in the lion's share of the profits. But that is all about to change. Clinical studies show that marijuana is a more effective pain therapy than prescription drugs, and it has none of the addictive or dangerous side effects. Studies also show, conclusively, that wherever marijuana is legalized, the number of painkiller prescriptions plummet dramatically. So do opioid overdose-related deaths. That's because cannabis effectively eliminates all of the withdrawal symptoms, including shakes, tremors, sweats, and neuropathy. That makes it a powerful pain reliever and addiction fighter. And it goes beyond just pain. Cannabis is shown in no less than 20,000 peer-reviewed studies to be a powerful treatment for all sorts of diseases, including cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, arthritis, epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, depression and anxiety, and PTSD. All of this is why big pharma execs are flooding to medical marijuana, and they're rushing to one tiny Canada pot play in particular. The CEO and founder has successfully overseen 11 painkillers to market, including several versions of OxyContin, so he knows a profitable thing when he sees it. The firm operates a state-of-the-art 23,500 square foot facility that was licensed by the Canadian government last year. Here's a picture of its manufacturing facility. Potential revenue from total production of these 7 rooms is $11.25 million. With the full development of the expansion, you're looking at about $120 million in revenue at full production. Just in November, this company IPO'd for over $1.30 per share. That makes it the single biggest marijuana IPO yet. But it looks like the very beginning of a historic growth story. When you consider that the pain market alone is over $500 million, this company is much like buying Pfizer, Merck, or Bristol Myers Squibb when they first went public in 1942. Since then, Pfizer has surged for unprecedented 24,000-fold gains. That's good enough to turn just $10 into $243,000. Heck, a $50 investment alone could have made you a millionaire. Please, don't miss out on this future big pharma of cannabis. Here's my final play. A way to get exposure to Canada's most top-notch marijuana firms in just one shot. It's not an ETF or index. Rather, it's a group of Manhattan VC investors who bucked Wall Street and moved to the remote wilderness of Canada. Their mission? Get in on the world's $200 billion legal cannabis market while it's still early. Since then, they've gone on a buying spree of Canada's best pot companies at fire sale prices. And so far, they've had more than a little success. You see, there are thousands of marijuana firms in Canada. Out of these, only 35 are licensed. And licensing is key because it hands these firms a first mover advantage, because it sets them up early with market share, and because of the red tape in the Canadian licensing process. The handful of licensed firms will be the real winners when cannabis becomes 100% legal in April. And here's the thing. This venture capital group has scooped up 7 of these licensed firms. That's 20% of Canada's hottest marijuana assets, all bought at fire sale prices. And they did it by aiming at these undervalued firms before 100% legalization takes place. They bought one firm for $6 million, even though its assets were valued at $65 million. That's an instant 1,000% return. One of their latest acquisitions includes what's perhaps Canada's best cannabis asset. This did 2 big things for them. First, it made them the nation's one and only licensed producer on both coasts, a huge advantage that will pay investors massively when pot is. This company has seized 1/5 of the legal Canadian market, and it's not done. The savvy investors who run it are positioning themselves for the end of pot prohibition. They're scooping up Canada's cream of the pot crop, and they're moving at a frantic pace. The company still trades for around $1, with room for immediate tenfold returns ahead. It all starts in April. Don't sit this one out. So you've seen all the profits up for grabs, the upcoming catalyst that can put this money in your pocket soon, and how marijuana stocks are already making investors rich, so that you too can turn this into the profit opportunity. Since then, it's been one heck of a ride. In over 30 states, marijuana is now legal for medical or recreational use, some for both. And shares of companies I recommended soared for historic gains you've seen here today. Some of my readers have seen some of the biggest financial returns of their life, including one of my pot stocks that soared for 830% in less than 12 months. But now I'm doubling down. In light of these returns that are really just the beginning of a decades-long mega boom,